Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unbottleneck, the podcast where we solve common marketing problems, particularly those that happen on the internet. And today we're going to be disrupting our normal routine of talking about inbound marketing specifically and SEO. And we're going to get a little bit more into talking about your audiences and, a term called disruptive, which is a bit of a buzzword in our industry at the moment. Our guest today is Saunder Schroeder. Saunder is the Chief Marketing Officer at Disruptive Advertising. Previously, he served as the Chief Product Officer and VP of Paid Social. He works with many e-commerce and B2B companies. He launched the Facebook ad product at Disruptive and oversaw sales and marketing for enterprise SEO and content marketing agency. Saunder's a legend in his own mind. His mission is to grow people and brands that he believes in. He has a beautiful wife and 2 kids. Well, I'm reading from his bio. I don't know if his wife's beautiful, so I'm sure she's amazing. But I'm like, wait a minute, this is coming off really wrong. He's a protector of sweet potato fries and performance station wagons. We're gonna have to agree to disagree on the sweet potato. That's something I think I need to learn the acquired taste for. So Saunder grows, as I mentioned, people and brands he believes in. Extremely motivated by growth and learning to surrender, embracing the now, and enjoying the journey. Saunder, welcome to the show, and thanks for hanging out with us and talking about some of this disruptive advertising. Can you give us a little bit more background on that and kind of how you got into it?
Yeah. Thanks for the intro. My wife is beautiful, so I will say that.
I'm reading a bio line that always comes off weird, like, oh, he's a beautiful wife. It's like, hey, how do you know my wife's beautiful? What's going on here? Like, I don't know her. I swear to God, I've never met her.
That's good. I mean, I got started in digital marketing in college when I started my own e-commerce store and had to figure out how to sell products online. And, really, I think what was motivating for me then was, how do I take beautiful girls on dates? And so I needed to make some money. So that's, so it was good. Back then, I got a lot more into like influencer marketing on Instagram. This was about 12 years ago. So it was pretty early in the Instagram days. And so that was great. Started dabbling in, some Facebook ads, shortly after that, where it was pretty much what a boosted post looks like now. And saw some good results.
I remember those low cost per acquisition that we get on Facebook. I remember Facebook ads before there was conversion tracking, and it was still a top performer. Like when I look at analytics, it was like, wow, we've got $1 cost per acquisition versus $7 on Google. So, and then those days are coming to an end, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes. Yeah. I mean, it's still very effective, still for a lot of businesses, one of the top performing channels, but the early days were definitely great. So, that's kind of what got me started in digital marketing. And, I think it's been good for me as I've worked at other agencies, been a CMO at another e-commerce company, really just to have that business mindset and also, that customer mindset as well, to be able to test and try new channels. So I think, I love where I've been, and I'm excited about, where I'm going, but it's been a great journey so far.
What does that term mean for those people who've never really heard disruptive advertising before? And it's perfect name to name your brand during a time where people are really starting to use that phrase a little bit more. What does disruptive mean in digital marketing terms?
Yeah, I would say being disruptive is, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is not afraid to fail. And realizing anything you test and try is a learning, and leads you hopefully to a positive result. I think one of my favorite sayings is on Remember the Titans, where he says it's just like Novocaine, give it time, it always works. And that's kind of how I feel like advertising is you're just testing and trying new things and finding what works. But I think that consistency is usually what leads to it. And so I think a lot of times when we think disruptive, it has to be, these groundbreaking things that have never
That's what I was thinking, before. Like draw outside the lines a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's a big aspect of it. But I really think it's just even if you're doing Facebook ads, what's like
Mm.
an ad you might never want to do because I don't know, you talk yourself out of XYZ. And I think, there's room for talking yourself out, but I think there's also room to just try and see what happens and
Yeah.
see how it resonates with your customer. And I think there's smart ways to do it by going to your top customers and say, hey, we want to run this ad. We know it's a little maybe gray area in our messaging or different than what we've done.
Pushing the
Does
envelope.
it resonate with you? So
Right.
I think there's smart ways to be disruptive as well.
That's awesome. Well, we put some questions together based on a little bit of what we learned about you. And the first one that we had actually relates to an article that you got published on Forbes called Trying to Promote Your Local Business 3 Easy Facebook Video Ad Ideas. We'd love to hear more about those. But first, can you tell us why on video ads on Facebook and why there's such a strong route for local businesses?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're just seeing, I think that the next wave of attention span, and I think video is just a great way to capture a lot of information and convey a lot of information to pain points quickly, creatively, and just, with the right hook, you can get people engaged and really educate them in one ad versus, maybe it taking 5 or 6 to really educate. And I think that's, more important for businesses that are in a niche that isn't maybe as understood. And so I just think video ads, are just very effective. And now, you know, as we're moving more towards this 6 second type of attention span, it's becoming more and more important. And, I think just more and more relevant.
Yeah, I remember bumper ads weren't working as effectively as we wanted them to a few years back in Google, and now you're definitely seeing a lot more of them. I think businesses are figuring out how to create a storyline so that when they do promote videos, that they're doing it in a sequence that tells a story, so that by the time the user gets to the end of that story, they know the brand, they're engaged. I think one of the terms that I've heard in the past is advertorial, right?
Hmm.
So right, it's an ad, but it's a tutorial. At the same time, you're educating, you're showing how to do something or a value. I see a lot of those. I think some of the products I purchase, for myself, for health, for working out, are based on a video where someone's showing you how to do something, and you
Yeah.
think it's really interesting. I'd love to have that. And as opposed to it being buy this thing, it's more like this is how this works, and this is how you do this thing. As opposed to it being buy our stuff. I think that
Yeah.
the message, the narrative, is different, especially in social where people aren't looking to be sold; they're looking for content, right? They're
Yeah.
looking to consume content, and I think you're right. I think the videos have that different narrative, embodied in them, by being video and not just being a banner ad, for sure.
Yeah. I love that advertorial. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So how did you get pulled into this Forbes article? Is that something where they read something you'd already done, or you just said, "Hey, I'd love to write for you"? How did that happen?
Yeah, I was a contributor there, I think like 4 or 5 years ago. And then, yeah, I've just been contributing here or there. Yeah, just when I guess the opportunity comes up. So
Yeah.
yeah,
How do you say
that's,
no, right? Like, hey, will you
yeah.
write an article for us? Yeah, when do you need it? That
Yeah.
happened to me last year. The International Journal of Digital and Social Media Marketing reached
Oh,
out and
cool.
they said, "Hey, could you do an article for our publication?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, of course." It's like, well, it needs to be at least like 5,000 words, and I'm like, "Oh my
Ooh,
god!" So yeah, it was
that's
this
a big one.
huge thing. Yeah, and so that's actually got published this month, but that's how long they give you, to work on it, to go through all the phases, and it's really unique. I'd say for any business, if you get the opportunity, even though it's a lot of effort, it's a fantastic way to sort of establish yourself as a subject matter expert, and
Yeah.
build more trust and authority. Some publications will actually get you into the Google Scholar library, like the journals. So
Oh,
something
cool.
to think about. Let's break from Facebook video ads, and let's kind of break them down a little bit, actually, into
Yeah.
what they are and kind of how they work. Can you give us a little bit of an overview on how that whole Facebook advertising works for video?
Yeah. It's pretty straightforward once you actually create the video. I think
Okay.
that's obviously the hardest part. Um, is
And the most
doing.
expensive, the
Yeah.
production and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Editing,
think,
audio.
oh yeah, it's a pain. And also, I think, what we're seeing with a lot of our clients is just short selfie videos from their customers or clients are outperforming our, $3,000 to $5,000 like production videos. And I think there's a time and a place. Like, the production videos tend to perform better, maybe top of funnel, where these testimonial video ads from customers and clients tend to perform better, bottom funnel, when someone's a lot closer to making a purchase or sell. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, once you kind of have your idea, your storyboard, there's essentially three types of videos that um, we like to start with. And the first one's kind of just like a branded video. Here's, kind of like you were saying, I think
Yeah.
we're starting to see a shift in how that's done. It's not just all about, here's what we do and we're awesome. It's more community driven, maybe more engagement driven, more educational, which
Problem
I think
solving,
is,
right?
yeah. And so, yeah, so I think that's definitely, one area, or definitely a good place to start. I definitely lean towards, even like, I don't know, you almost, I think, back to that disruptive concept,
Mhm.
just like record a video. And if that means you're doing it on an iPhone, your first video,
Yeah.
great. Like, just do it, see how it turns out. And um, you know, if and just learn from it. I think, and it could perform better than a production video, at the end of the day as well.
I
So,
know I know people appreciate authenticity, and
yeah,
sometimes expensive production ads um, can resonate with customers as, oh, this is a big company, it's going to cost a lot of money. But when it is smaller and it is a little bit more authentic, it feels like, hey, this isn't going to cost me much, right? Oh, and it's unique in that billions of people probably haven't purchased it, so I'll have something somebody else might not. So yeah,
yeah,
I think that, like you said, depending on your audience, it could be a win there. So
yeah,
those are what you call brand story ads.
yeah, yeah. You're just more or less highlighting, your business and who you are. And I think it's up to you, dependent on your brand guidelines, how professional you want that to look, or if you're fine setting things aside. I'm definitely like our chief sales officer. He's definitely a lot more like the perfectionist, where I'm
Yeah,
the, let's get it to 80%, launch it, see how it does, and then
yeah.
optimize that way. And so I think there's a lot of different, just like, personalities within an organization. And I think it's kind of up to you and your business and what you want to do there. But yeah, that's what I would say. Kind of the first one, the branded one.
And I know the testimonial ads are kind of a big deal. I take a vitamin called Routine, Rootine, and
Hmm.
it's a company basically where you do like a DNA test, and they send you these vitamins that are based on what your body's deficient on, as opposed to just all the great vitamins that you could be
Cool.
taking. It's based
Yeah.
off what you need, which I thought was really neat. So after taking it for a few weeks, I noticed I had more energy, and I'm like, this is cool. So I did a little video testimonial from them, and then
Sweet.
their marketing person comes back and is like, "Hey, could you record another one for us and talk about this and talk about that?" And I'm like, "Sure, I guess." So apparently, they're leveraging that, as other brands are, taking those testimonials and turning them into kind of social proof and assisting with some of their ad strategy. So it'll be really interesting to see how they use those videos. And I'm for sure going to ask, "Hey, if I'm doing you a favor, show me a little bit on the back end of what you're doing with it, so I can see what's been effective." My competency lies in getting a page to show up in search results like Google or Google Maps. So this whole
Yeah.
idea of audiences and creative and social ads is sort of a new area for me. So I'm super curious to see how that works. And you're seeing testimonials be equally as effective.
Yeah, yeah. We're we've more moved like our testimonials and more framed it now as like UGC, so user generated content is kind
Right.
of like, and that's kind of like a buzzword now, I would say, in the industry, right? But yeah, we saw on, so we have a swimsuit, a women's like swimwear swimsuit company,
Okay.
and we were running YouTube ads for them and seeing a great, CPA and just great top of funnel traffic. We
Target men and watch your 70% CTR. Right?
Yeah, yeah, it was good. But and then
Swimsuit ads. That's a tough one. I mean, who wants to see swimsuit ads, right?
I can't tell you how many people do or not, but yeah, so that we switched that to user generated content,
Okay.
and we were able to drop the CPA by 90%.
No
And
way.
so, yeah, it was wild. So we went from a few dollars down to, 30, 40 cents. It was crazy. And so those are the results, we're definitely seeing. And I think this is very applicable. Like, even if you're like a local business, let's
Mhm.
say, you're a plumber, you go into a house and, maybe a toilet's extremely clogged and a
Yeah.
sink. I think just like, maybe highlighting your process and then getting a testimonial after of like, oh yeah, I called XYZ Plumbing, and they were able, to get this unclogged and fixed in, 3 days, or sorry, in 30 minutes, while I was putting down like 10 bottles of Drano and couldn't get any like fixes, So
Yeah.
I think it's very applicable across the board, to
Mhm.
just get these user generated content
It's
testimonials
relatable. I
or
think it's super
unboxing.
relatable for customers for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. And then there's these event ads, right? We talked about the brand story ads, testimonial ads. What are event ads?
Yeah, so a lot of businesses use events to connect with their customers. So whether that's, an anniversary event, and they invite all their customers out, or, maybe that's just part of your marketing is you run events, to just grow brand awareness. This to us is just a spin on taking a very like, more intimate, I guess, event or marketing channel and just adding video to it. So I think really this was more to highlight just adding video to any channel can be effective, even if it's an event, and just trying to generate interest, or yeah, coming to celebrate a milestone with your
Right.
customers or whatever that may be. Just using video. We did the example here is we had a client who did like hip hop events and more like grassroots style. And, it was more highlighting before a lot of like the artists.
Okay.
And for us, what we did is more highlighted the experience, and that included the artist. And so
Mhm.
that's where we saw a massive decrease in our CPA and people wanting to go to these events because they related more with the experience, where a lot of the artists were grassroots and not super
Yep.
common. And so, that was just a great example we saw
I
there.
noticed that in the EDM industry, right? I love
Yeah.
EDM music when I'm working in the evenings, even though I know anyone under 40 is like, no, you had your dance card taken away at 40. But I noticed that like Tomorrowland and EDC, and if you look at some of their ads and some of their content in social media, it's
Yeah.
very experience driven. It's about the
Yeah.
the people and the stage and the audience and the moments, and I think that moment style advertising, really is a compelling message that gets people interested as opposed to your standard click here and a product picture or something, right?
Yep.
So
Exactly.
for sure. Um, any new areas of emphasis with video Facebook ads or strategies that are coming up as a result of the pandemic? Like businesses finally, as they're finally seeing their doors open again. Have you seen a lot more emphasis in video?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for sure during the pandemic. And that's where, I would say there was a lot of like disruptive things happening because you couldn't have a film crew, right? Like you couldn't have people together during the pandemic. And so that's where, it was cool, similar to I just forgot the company, the vitamin
A routine.
routine.
Mhm.
Similar to how they approached you. Hopefully they offered some free, vitamins to do some more videos and things. But, more or less, that's what a lot of our clients have done is started sending and more or less choreographing like videos. There's a company called B-roll. It's b-roll.io.
Okay.
They're not a client of ours, but they're a very cool company where you can put your entire like script on the screen. So as someone's like recording a selfie,
Mm.
of, let's say, unboxing your product, it gives them some prompts like, oh, talk about like the quality,
Help
or
tips. Yeah.
show yourself wearing the product now. So it's a cool way to just almost script out videos from user generated content. And so yeah, I would say, to that previous point, we're just seeing a lot more user generated content. I've talked about some of the performance there.
It's a heck of a lot
um,
more affordable than hiring some of these influencers, I'm sure. I
oh yeah.
remember doing a little bit of influencer marketing for a Super Bowl commercial a few years back, and the what was it, Jake Paul and his group over there,
Yeah.
$200,000 to have him mention the brand in a 1 minute clip. And I'm like, wow, $200,000 a minute. I'm doing something wrong with my life. But that was the reality because he had, what, 3 million followers, subscribers, or whatever. The
Yeah.
organic part of a mention, that's non advertising related, but just sort of promoting something, in a way that feels authentic.
Yeah.
Is something that all businesses, want from their customers. So to get in front of 3 million people in a 1 minute clip, if you do that on Google Ads, it's probably still going to cost you, at least $100,000 or more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was really fascinating. So you're right. If you can get you don't know which of your customers is going to turn into a micro influencer or eventually even an influencer. So by spreading it out like that, there's a there's a chance. It's a small chance, but there's a chance you could be seen by potentially thousands of customers at no cost other than maybe a free product.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's definitely something to say about influencers. And at that level, the Jake Pauls, Logan Pauls, KSIs, like, those are for sure like the new celebrities, right? I mean, hundreds of millions of subscribers, followers across all of their channels. And I mean, if you think about it too at like a micro level, I think just about every person has at least 50 followers that are more or less like loyal or a part of their tribe to some degree. And so I think even micro influencers sharing things or just an everyday person can drive an impact. It's just a lot harder to manage. At that point, 500 micro influencers versus sending it to one person
Yeah.
and executing that way. And so I think that's definitely an interesting trend we're seeing in kind of that influencer space of, if you can manage that many micro influencers, your return's probably going to be a lot higher and a lot newer customers. And
But the
at the
cost on the
bigger
research
level,
side to manage it's probably going to, be at least, two resources or two full-time
at,
team members, right?
at
Or more.
least.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
those types of marketers aren't interns. Those are expensive team
Yeah.
members, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
it is interesting just where things are going.
So the hot topic of the day, and this is where people are going to get really ticked off that we waited to the end to talk about it, is this whole thing that's on the radar with Apple and Google bringing us into this whole cookieless future.
Yeah.
Could you give our listeners kind of your working definition of how cookies currently work and what's changing?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, a cookie is a piece of code that usually lives on a website, also in like apps, that essentially allows a business to understand your behavior on the internet. So, Facebook, for example, is one of the more popular cookies. That one's considered like a third party cookie. And so what that means is Facebook is using your data to more or less build their business or their business model. And then you have first party cookies, and that would be like a Google Analytics, where you have your own property. Google, theoretically, putting it in quotes for those listening, um, isn't using that data in Google AdWords. That's more for the customer, us business owners, to use that data to make business decisions. And
Right.
so that's how I would describe a cookie. Is it just allows whoever has the cookie to understand and track, across multiple websites, your, yeah, all of your behaviors more or less. So
Sure. I think one example too would be, and I know Amazon's doing a much better job of being able to use first party data more than anyone. But you go to a website and a piece of JavaScript that's on the site kicks off and basically plants a little text file on your computer. And
Yeah.
as you navigate through the website and as you navigate anywhere, that information continues to be compiled on that little file on your computer, and then in aggregate, the sites will take all of that information across all their users to better understand, what customers are looking for, what their interests are, and target them correctly. So if you visit a website and you go to, I don't know, maybe you like Rolex watches and you go to a Rolex Submariner page, that cookie is going to store that you like Rolex Submariners. And the next time you're surfing around the web, your Google Ads is going to know, hey, this person looked at the Rolex page because we found it in the cookie. So let's show them the Submariner ads since we know they have an interest in that, and the cookie stored that information about them. It's interesting when I think about how much data is available in those cookies that anybody could crawl and navigate to. You could actually open one up on your computer. You can go to any YouTube tutorial and say, how do I look at what's in a cookie on my computer? And walk through it and see exactly what they're storing about you in that, which is why a lot of people clear their cookies often because they're worried about privacy. But
Yeah.
we're not going to have to worry about that as much anymore, right? Something's changing. What's going on with cookies?
Yeah. So Apple I mean, kind of is the one who started it, right? In pushing privacy. A lot of what they're doing
You
on their
can't not see
devices.
those billboards right now. Everywhere you go, everyone sees the billboard with the person holding the phone, right? The
Yeah.
iPhone saying privacy. And it's like, I think we get it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. They're definitely pushing it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a definitely a hot button right now.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of cultural events that have also led to this.
Hmm.
But yeah, Apple's kind of led the charge, and now Google, I think, is committed to do it by 2023. So in a year and a half, more or less. But to get rid of all third party tracking. So they're not removing like first party tracking just because that doesn't track you across multiple websites.
Yeah.
So, if you were to go to disruptiveadvertising.com, we would still have tracking of how many pages you visited on the site. But then we wouldn't have, the benefit of understanding, from Facebook or Google, the ads you're now seeing and different things like that. So it's just to simplify it. And as you're also seeing, users can still opt into tracking. And it's pretty funny. I mean, just seeing a lot of people on Twitter now saying, the worst thing about getting advertising is getting advertising without these cookie recommendations,
Yeah.
because now people are just seeing ads that aren't relevant to them at all. Like
Right.
at least with a
Hey, that's
Rolex ad.
they wanted privacy. So this is, if you don't like seeing, if you're a man and you don't like seeing an ad for some men's speedo swimsuit because it's not your thing. Sorry, you said you didn't want cookies, and now cookies, we're helping at least give you ads that were related to things that you were interested in, and now you're
Yeah,
gonna get randomness.
yeah,
Congratulations.
exactly. Yeah, and so and who knows? Like maybe eventually, because what Apple's doing is essentially like deploying their algorithm on everyone's phone.
Yeah.
And so that way your recommendation engine isn't lost. But Apple kind of has the liberty to do that just because they understand all the processing. And so, there could come a time where Facebook and Google do the same thing, where everything is processed and encrypted on your phone. And then their algorithm's the one that's feeding it, but it's all encrypted. So, I think that could be a future that does happen. And I don't understand computer processing to the level to understand what could happen there.
All
So
that
yeah,
artificial
lots of
intelligence. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, lots of changes coming. So far, we haven't seen a huge dip. Anywhere from a 3 to 5% is typically what we're seeing people opt out. So it hasn't been. I mean, we were pretty nervous for a lot of our clients because they have built their businesses on Facebook advertising and Google advertising. And so, losing that would definitely hurt their businesses. And I know Shopify is working on a solution. I mean, Facebook obviously this is with Facebook hitting $1 trillion market cap today, this is literally $1 trillion problem for people to solve. So
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to
it's
see
one
how it
step
happens.
back, two steps forward, I think, and we're going through the one step back part right now.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
agree. Which I think is healthy, which I do think is good. Like I'm definitely, I use a VPN a lot. Like I think to some points I value my privacy, and almost to other points it's almost like I'm like pot committed at this point. Like
right.
what's the purpose? And like Verizon is selling my triangulated data back to Facebook to understand my IP address and where I'm traveling and where I'm at. So, it also is like all these companies, when you sign up for a rewards card at your local grocery store, they're using that data to then, sell back to Facebook or other data people. So it's just very interesting. It just feels like a lot of things really aren't private anymore. And so it's like making a stand to me feels like something I want to do, and I do in some ways. And also, just feels like I am pot committed at this point, like
Yeah, it's tough,
to get
especially when we're
over it.
digital marketers, right? We look at the world a little bit differently than your average consumer. I
Yeah.
think businesses have another dilemma to worry about. If you are a small business and you have a website, um, you've got to address this cookie issue, right? And you can put up a thing saying this site uses cookies, hit OK. But
Yeah.
what if they don't hit OK, right? You've got to run something on your website, basically. You're supposed to anyway. When somebody hits your website, no analytics are supposed to kick in yet. They have to hit accept cookies. But the reality is, almost every single website that has Google Analytics kicks Google Analytics in the moment they hit the website. They're already
Yeah.
being tracked the second they hit the website. But users are supposed to not be tracked until they hit the OK, I accept. And then when that happens, then they're supposed to be able to navigate the website and we can track their information. But if they click no, I don't think any websites, very few websites, have any sort of plugins or things connected to remove the tracking so that as they do navigate after clicking no, that information isn't being tracked. And are there solutions for small businesses or plugins or services that they can have their webmasters install so that the analytics actually does get removed if somebody opts out? That seems to be a really frustrating conundrum for a lot of small businesses. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I was just thinking that's a good $1 billion idea right there. Yeah, I mean, we're lucky enough that at least, personally with our business, we use HubSpot, and we're,
Us too.
they auto essentially do that for you, which is nice. I'm not sure, on like the e-commerce front, if Shopify has something similar already built in. I know,
Sure.
they're
If
very
anyone can
focused
do
on
it, they
privacy.
can. They're pretty amazing.
Yeah, they really are. And I would assume WordPress would probably have something. And to be frank, like I don't know, right? Like I don't know the answer to that question. I know there are
Like I
solutions
don't know
out
the
there.
answer, but I'll have a blog post on it in a week.
Yeah.
Check disruptiveadvertising.com. But yeah, I think that's a great content opportunity for sure. I'm sure there's a lot of different things being said, but there are very few actionable checklists for ways to address these things that aren't broad or drive them to really expensive solutions that small businesses can't afford. So
Yeah.
I think there's a huge gap there that goes beyond just what we need to do, but creating solutions that are drag and drop, that don't I'll use the pun disrupt disrupts our page performance with all the Google updates that are happening, but at the same time, give the user the ability to actually opt out instead of just clicking OK or leave website.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so this is iOS 14, right? Is the update that removes some of the cookies that iPhones are tracking? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. 14.5 is, yeah, more. It was the most recent update. Well, I think they're actually on point 0.7 now, but yeah, 14.5 is when they,
So,
yeah, when they
which
launched that.
leads us advertisers to a place where before we were trusting our marketers to use the data that we had access to craft campaigns and targeting options within ads to our specifications. And as we start to get more constrained by privacy, we have to put our trust into Facebook and Google algorithms to do some of that that bidding and that targeting for us, which is going to be a huge switch, I think, from an advertiser's mindset. The good part of that, the bad part, the step back is that we lose control over a lot of those options. The good part of it is because we don't have to think about those things anymore. We can put more time and energy into our ads, into our testimonials and stuff. I think there's a lot more emphasis that can be put into the creative aspects now that we don't have as much control over the finite targeting. And that might be a win for businesses, and I think maybe that's the first of the two steps forward that we can look forward to as advertisers.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think, yeah, enhancing creative, and I think honestly enhancing like UTM parameters and
yeah,
things in analytics, and even leveraging now Facebook analytics, that's becoming more valuable as well,
sure.
just because that is considered first party, right? And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I think those two approaches are solid.
Yep. And for those who haven't heard that term UTM, you could just do a quick Google search for my favorite phrase for when I'm doing this is Google UTM Builder. And there's this cool little tool. You basically put in the web page you want to send the traffic to. You name the campaign that you're going to be using in ads or in social. You name the content. Maybe it's add to with underscore blue button, or testimonial 3 or whatever, and the medium that you're using. Is it cost per click? Is it email? You put those things in, it generates a little URL for you. You just pop that URL with all those other parameters that it added for you into your ads. And now when you go into your Google Analytics, you can actually go into campaigns and segment which campaign is performing, which network, which source, which medium. And you can build some really smart reporting to better understand your audience a little bit. So UTMs are great. And I don't expect that's going to go anywhere unless at some point the advertising publishers decide to strip UTMs or something, which I hope they never do, because then we lose everything. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, I think that's something advertisers can play with for sure. All right, I got some lightning round questions for you. You ready?
let's do it.
All right. What are your favorite tools as you're doing some of this paid social advertising? What are some of the tools that you like to use that make the job a little bit more streamlined?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the top places I like to start is audience insights. And
Okay.
so that way you can more or less get a lot of like demographic information, interest information, not as much behavior information now, since a lot of that got removed a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Um, but I think just a good way to understand your current customer. So you can upload a customer list into that, and Facebook will essentially tell you like who your average customer is. Google Analytics also offers a demographic section
Mhm.
that provides similar data. That's very helpful.
Know
And
your
then,
audience. Love it.
yeah, exactly. That's honestly where I always start. And then literally like call my top 20 customers and just get on a phone call with them and understand, what's top of mind for them. If it's B2B, it's more like, what are the industry trends you're paying attention to? If it's
Sure.
more, so that's business to business. And then if it's like e-commerce, it's like, what do you love about our product? What do you love about our competitors' product? I think just really getting to know them. And I think making it that, I guess how I positioned it was very transactional. I like to actually like get to know them as well, and like human to human, just be like a real person, and really
So the
understand who
best
they are.
tools then are going to be some that are within the interfaces of the advertising platforms and making phone calls to customers. Your phone is the instrument that drives some of the data that you won't get from platforms. I love that.
Yeah.
What are some places that people can go if they wanted to start learning about paid social advertising? Would you recommend like LinkedIn Learning? Is there a certain place, if you had to start from scratch today, where would you go to sort of master this whole area of advertising?
Yeah. I would say, at least for me, just doing it and failing was the quickest way to learn. But this was
Yeah, you
before
and me both.
there was any like info on it.
Uh-huh.
And Facebook actually has a very good like blueprint program. So they call it Facebook Blueprint.
Okay.
And anyone can go and set up an account there. And I think you might have to set up a business manager, but it will walk you through all of how to do that. And then you can just go through it yourself, and they have it, very simple, working your way up to, even our top marketing consultants are still going through, the newer courses they're launching.
Hmm.
And I think just with all the changes, it's helpful as well. CXL has some good trainings as well,
Okay.
just around all digital marketing. And I think there's other places like Digital Marketing Institute and things like that. I've never personally done that, but
Sure.
I think
But they're there.
most of these places are pretty good.
Nice. Who should we be following in your industry if we want to kind of keep up to date with some of these changes and some tips, and who shares information that helps us make informed decisions about our advertising that you would follow on social?
I subscribe to like the Facebook ads chat, the hashtag
Okay.
on Twitter. And
Okay.
so that's a good follow just to get a diverse amount of people. And then there's like the PPC chat. Um, you know, there's no one like coming to mind. I think it's yeah, I mean there are a lot of good people out there. I think more or less I just see who's saying what and commenting. A lot of them are like other agency owners or more consultants, um, and so I just followed the hashtag first, and then the people that I resonated with or I liked their opinions and feedback. I guess supporting that echo chamber of
Sure.
mine is who I followed, but they seem to be helpful.
Right on. And where do you see the future of paid social going in, say, 5 years from now?
Hmm. I it's hard not to be excited about some kind of augmented reality or virtual reality in five
Okay.
years. I think that's pretty far out there. And then I think a lot of the kind of the stepping stones to that will be like Snapchat. They're definitely the ones investing the most into augmented reality. I think even more than like an Apple is, even
Right.
though they have their AR kit. So I think they're going to continue to grow, especially as that demographic continues to be more and more buyers.
Mhm.
And I really do like podcast advertising right now, and running that directly through like Spotify, for example.
Sure.
I think is huge, and I think untapped, I guess is what I should say. I think
Okay.
yeah. So that's what I would, and OTT. So that's going to be like your Hulu's, your YouTube. I don't
Yep.
know. I think
Over
kind
the
of
top.
yeah, yeah,
Very
over the
cool.
top.
Well,
So
great. So if someone had questions for you about some of the stuff we talked about today, or disruptive advertising or paid advertising, what's the best way they can get in contact with you?
yeah, so you can find me, Saunder Schroed, SaunderSchroed, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. That's kind of my URL and username. So if that's a medium, or if you like email, Saunder at disruptiveadvertising.com, and more than happy to chat, run questions, do whatever we need to do there.
Awesome. And you gave some great reference points too. We'll put some links in the actual video too for people who want to click on some of those, like the Forbes listing and some other stuff. So we'll make sure
Cool.
everybody has that. This has been a lot of fun, and I kind of want to dive into my business manager account now and start playing around a little bit. But thanks so much for spending time with us today, and thanks everybody for listening to this episode. Any kind of final words for folks listening?
I think just kind of the theme is don't be afraid to fail, and just get out and try and do and test. And I just think every failure I've ever had in life has always brought learning. And so try to minimize the amount of money or time investment into that failure. But I think that's just what marketing to me is failing and learning and figuring out what actually works.
I love it. We call that the grind, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Well, thank
exactly.
you so much for being on the show today. And guys, we will see you on the next episode.